The Legacy of Kain series is definitely one of the most beloved gaming experiences that has ever graced our living rooms. From its deep lore, incredible scripts, and dark fantasy elements, Legacy of Kain is worthy of its cult following. One of the most intriguing topics surrounding the series is the cut content of Soul Reaver 1. This content might have placed the series on a different trajectory altogether if it had made it to retail. However, some legal trouble and development woes ultimately gave us this masterpiece, if not infamous game that likely changed our lives forever in 1999. Let us take a look into the realm of what if and discuss what was originally intended for Soul Reaver. An absolutely phenomenal feature that Aspyr added to the Soul Reaver 1 and 2 remaster is the bonus content menu. This contains the lost levels that would have facilitated the original endgame for Soul Reaver. The original run of the game would have seen Raziel face Turel after defeating Dumas, and the second encounter with Kain in the Chronoplast. Turel resided at his smokestack to the north. This massive furnace would perpetually belch smoke into the sky and blot out the sun, allowing the vampires to roam the land of Nosgoth freely even during the day. This area was originally situated where the Oracle's Cave is found in the retail version of the game. The Oracle's Cave would have been reached through an open courtyard in the ruined city once Dumas had been defeated. This positioning would have more closely matched the map placement of the Oracle's Cave from Blood Omen. However, in order to reach Turel, Raziel would have needed to acquire additional abilities that were cut from the game. The original planned route would have seen Raziel fight Kain at the Chronoplast after facing Dumas and gaining the Shift at Will ability. This fight would end in a stalemate, as Raziel would attempt to devour Kain's soul, but Kain would manage to escape, fleeing to his northern retreat, while dropping his iconic line, "You nearly had me, Raziel." Much of the dialogue in the final battle in the retail version was a mix of the original second encounter and cut third encounter, with further dialogue being moved to the retail game's first encounter with Kain at the Pillars. The Shift at Will ability would have allowed Raziel to access the Undercity of the Human Citadel, an extensive subterranean area leading to the vampire-worshipping human priestess and her followers. The Elder God would prompt Raziel to return to the Human Citadel to seek her out. In a previous build of the game, there existed a day and night cycle. If Raziel explored the Citadel at night, he would have observed the vampire-worshipping cultists moving about secretly in the shadows, moving between the City 9 area and the temple building.
I watched unseen as shadowy figures slipped down the temple walls. The city slumbered, oblivious to the danger creeping just outside. Mysterious figures moved under cover of darkness, their robes betraying occult intent. This temple seemed to be a source of contagion. I would find a way to infiltrate this vampire lair.
The intent was to have these cultists based in this area exclusively. However, they were moved to the silenced Cathedral when the cuts were made. Moving through the Undercity would be a complex mess of blocking waterways to raise the overall water level, and a tricky puzzle requiring the player to freeze a block mid-air. Once the area was flooded and Raziel was able to swim to the top, the Priestess would be accessible. Unaliving her would have gained Raziel the ability to control the minds of most humans and vampires.
Heretic! Welcome to your undoing. Your sorcery is useless in this holy place.
My faith in destiny is all I need to prevail.
Faith? Faith left you when you were excommunicated by our Lord Kain.
I was executed, not excommunicated. You will learn the difference. Your faith has failed you. Where are your precious vampires now? Where is your holy Kain?
You are the one who has betrayed his faith, his brethren, his creator. I have served my gods.
And now, you will meet them.
In her long service to her vampire masters, the priestess had learned a measure of sorcery. In devouring her soul, this power is conferred on you. You may project your spirit, and in so doing, take possession of your victim's body.
With the additional abilities of Shift at will and possession in hand, Raziel would now be able to raid the Smokestack and face his final brother, Turel. Under the advisement of the Elder God once again, Raziel would head north past the ruined city to the area where the Oracle's Cave is situated in the retail version. This would have been the entrance to Turel's domain. Entering at the base of the Smokestack, you would notice a stationary orrery that would be an important piece needed to get the Smokestack operational again. Traversal would involve platforming mechanics, opening the rooms overlooking the orrery, and kick-starting the fans to access new areas of the Smokestack. Possession would have been key in this area, as vampires would need to be controlled to fill the central reservoir before Raziel could face Turel. Once Turel's chamber was accessible, Raziel would have been greeted by his final brother.
Let me pass, Turel. I have enough blood on my hands today. My quarrel lies with Kain.
Poor Raziel. Your rage blinds you to the bond of gratitude that we owe our master.
Gratitude? Toward one who would have you grovel at his gate like a dog? You once had noble aspirations, Turel. Now, how humbled are your goals? Do you prosper on the scraps he casts you?
Your insults will do nothing to blunt the agonies of your demise.
You killed me once. Behold the result. I have no more to fear from you.
The fight would involve imbuing the Reaver with the projectile energy that Turel fires at Raziel. You would then in turn use the empowered Reaver to blast down the support pillars around the reservoir door, allowing you to break open the reservoir door and enter the chamber beneath the stored water. Baiting Turel into breaking enough of the reservoir support pillars would cause the reservoir to crack open and flood the room, roasting dear brother Turel and allowing Raziel to consume his soul. This would grant Raziel an amplified force projectile that he could fire from the Reaver to open doors that were previously inaccessible to him. Now, with Raziel's new enhanced force projectile, he would have access to the side rooms overlooking the orrery and could constrict the dials to start the orrery's rotation. Once the orrery was rotating, he could then constrict and spin the entire orrery to jumpstart the Smokestack's giant fan system. This would create an immense updraft that you could use to glide high above the game's map and into the mountainous region where Kain's retreat was hidden. Arriving at Kain's retreat, Raziel would need to clamber up the walls and enter through the main courtyard. However, this would not be as easy as it sounds. On top of the boss inherited abilities that were cut, there also existed glyph altars, which mostly remained in the game barring one, and elemental forges, which would allow Raziel to imbue his Wraithblade with more than just the fire element. The 6 elemental enhancements were fire, sunlight, water, stone, sound, and spirit energy. These would be essential for progression and would even blockade Raziel in the endgame, as the power of all elemental Reaver types would be required for the final boss battle with Kain, and in fact, the magical seals that would have lined the courtyard at the entrance of Kain's retreat. Once the individual element had been obtained at its relevant forge, Raziel could regain the power at any time by striking the appropriate element. Before the cuts were made, Raziel would have required an elemental power-up to be able to kill vampires, as the powered-up Reaver Strike was only added to the game after the cuts were made. To the left of the main courtyard, Raziel finds a warp gate giving him open access to return to any missed forges that would be required to enter the retreat and face Kain. Walking through the preceding corridors, we see much the same architecture that is now present in the retail version of the Chronoblast. Making his way through this section, Raziel would find himself in a large room that was rumored to be Kain's display room, where he would show off armor and weapons from Blood Omen and all his other exploits across time. Finally, we would find ourselves in Kain's throne room, with much of the room holding some familiar imagery that can be seen across the retail version of the game. Kain would be seated on his throne and would deliver the lines that were moved to the beginning of the retail game's Chronoblast encounter. The fight would involve the player needing to imbue the Reaver with each of the 6 elements and damage Kain across a few phases of the battle. The elements would have been placed around the room and Raziel would have needed to strike each one. However, up till this point in the battle, only 5 of the 6 Reaver enhancements were available to Raziel, with the last being the Spirit or soul-enhanced Reaver. Without there being any souls to strike to create the Spirit Reaver, Ariel would reveal herself and offer up her soul in order to defeat Kain.
Raziel, I am your only hope. Only my spirit can empower the Soul Reaver to destroy Kain and restore balance to Nosgoth. You know this is true.
Do you have the will to do it, Raziel? Could it be, after all your posturing, you do not possess the resolve for this final act? Can you have come this far only to fail now? What game are you playing, Kain?
No game, Raziel.
Listen to her, Raziel. Strike me down if you can, but without her essence, the blow will barely sting. More of your lies.
Only truth. Believe me, Raziel. Believe.
This would create the amplified Yellow Reaver that would be able to destroy Kain once and for all. With Kain being struck down, his soul would be swallowed by the Reaver, turning it a deep red color. Raziel would note the combining of the two balanced guardian souls within the Reaver.
You have your father in you after all. My father? You're nothing but a grave robber, Kain. True enough. Such a dire fate. Their souls commingling, fettered eternally. Just as Kain's refusal at the Pillars had bound them together centuries before.
With his task nearing completion, the Elder God would spur on Raziel to press on to the pinnacle of the silenced cathedral. Leaving Kain's throne and proceeding up the stairs in the next chamber, one can note the architectural shift back to that of the silenced cathedral, suggesting that Kain's retreat is about to link to the cathedral somehow. Up a steep and imposing staircase, Raziel would enter the silenced cathedral adjacent to the retreat and begin his ascent to the top. Raziel would proceed to battle against a horde of vampires, eventually arriving at the main sounding pipes. Opening these pipes would play a deadly hymn across all of Nosgoth and bring the vampire plague to a definitive end.
From this summit, the pinnacle of the silenced cathedral is within your reach. Hurry, Raziel. With the Soul Reaver thus enhanced, no obstacle can thwart your progress, no enemy obstruct your path. But take heed, the vampires of this world can sense your intentions and will hound you in their desperate fury.
As they swarmed after me, I felt the terror that must have filled their wizened hearts. They knew what I had to do here, that it would spell their downfall, and that I too might perish in the very act. This tower had stood too long as a grotesque symbol of Kain's perverse intent. But time was ripe, indeed past due, for me to exploit my newborn talents and send a hymn of death across this land. Enough to banish sanity. Enough to set the children of the night plucking at their eyes, tearing open their own throats. Enough to destroy every vampiric creature on the face of this bruised and bleeding land. My goal was within reach. All that remained was to open each and every sounding pipe.
It is done, Raziel.
Raziel would leap from the top of the cathedral and glide down to the cliffs of the swirling abyss that created him.
Your destiny is fulfilled. Though you have destroyed every creature who might call you kin, the world is born anew. The cycle of birth and death, stalled and stagnant these long years, once again begins to flow.
He would hear the cries of the souls of every vampire ever in existence being pulled down through the swirling abyss to re-enter the Wheel of Fate. A harrowing noise that took Raziel aback and made him wonder if he had made the right decision. Next up, everyone, we have the lore of Soul Reaver 1 as it exists in the retail release and current timeline of the game. I'll see you there. Woo!